The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, my name is Pradeep Patel. I work as practice manager with eDynamic, and through this webinar today I'll be discussing details about progressive web apps, what they actually are, how the magic of progressive web apps happen, and later on we'll be discussing few case studies wherein how the organizations who have moved to progressive web apps have got increased value by using these magical things called PWAs. So let me start with a very brief intro about what PWAs are. So as we know, it's not a very new term. So progressive web apps have been into picture for almost 2 years. So prior to that, they were not called progressive web apps, but on similar lines, we had features wherein we could actually bookmark the things, and then Chrome extensions have allowed us to actually set our priorities, and then helping us not to actually take the pain of remembering things, and ensuring that once we bookmark we have an easy access to the links that we were doing. So recently there is a new term that emerged in the market that we call progressive web apps. So I was initially wondering as to what progressive web apps are. Then I deep dived into as to what they are, and through this webinar, I'll be sharing my experience of what progressive apps are. And if I talk about my experience, so I specialize in web and mobile applications. When we talk about mobile applications, I've been doing progressive web apps, hybrid apps, native apps, and the mobile web for a few giants across the globe. So moving forward, so what exactly is a progressive web app? So progressive apps are actually websites which are using recent web standards. When we talk about web standards, I'll be detailing out what the web standards are. And these progressive web apps distinguish themselves from rather than being ordinary websites by providing a complete app-like experience to users. They help in creating engaged users by providing them quick links so that once, say, a website is a progressive web app, so if the user is going there, so if we talk about a normal web app or a normal website for that matter, so normal website, you go there unless and until you bookmark it, you will take time to find out where that link was, what you were doing in that thing, what actually it provided. But if it is a progressive web app, then you get an option of remembering what that was by getting an icon on your homepage. So I'll be detailing about how that is done or what that actually happens. But when we talk about exclusively progressive web apps, the main feature that we get here is we get more engaged users. When we talk about engaged users, so the first feature that we get is the user can add a quick link to their home screens. Secondly, we can actually send them on demand push notifications. So when we talk about push notifications, there are two kind of push notifications. One that you generally get on your apps that you install on your devices, but progressive web apps do not need any installation. So they do not rely on any installation. You do not need to actually have an app on App Store. They simply are websites that the user can create a link on their home screen and accesses on demand there. Moving forward, so I'll be discussing what features do we actually get when we talk about progressive web apps. So as the name says progressive, so I'll be somewhat deep diving as to what that progressive means. So progressive simply means irrespective of the screen size, irrespective of the browser, irrespective of the form factor that the device is using, the screen wouldn't be visible equally on the resolutions and sizes. So if you are viewing this thing in a browser, whether it be on your laptop, if you go to say mobile, if you go to a tablet, or even larger size for that matter smart TVs, so everything would look similar on all the devices. Then the second feature that it provides is it is always fresh and safe. What do we mean by fresh? When we talk about fresh, so since it is a web app, so whenever the user opens that page, so if you made any changes onto your website, the user would always get the latest changes that you have recently published on your website. Safety is another thing that PWAs offer, since they run exclusively on HTTPS. So by HTTPS, it's a generic term, so it is running on a secured server. So running on HTTPS definitely makes it safe. That ensures that there is no hampering on the data that the user is requesting, no hackers in between to actually fetch with your information. So it is always the intended information that the user is looking for, and it's reliable and safe that the user is getting. And one of the major features that I like about PWAs is connectivity independence. So connectivity independence is, till now we have heard about, it is a website, then you need to have the internet connection to access it. But when we talk about PWAs, it even works in offline mode. So the pages or the features that you have accessed on a website, even if there is no internet connectivity, you would be able to access them in the offline mode as well. Additionally, it has been designed technically inside so that it works on even the lowest networks. So when we talk about lowest network, is like 4G, 5G are the fastest networks that we currently have. But even if the bandwidth is very low, or even if the user is running on 2G networks, then also the progressive web apps provide you all the functionalities, and the load time is really low. Then, since it is a website, so it is always discoverable with the search engines. So you do not need to do additional SEOs. So obviously you would do SEOs if you want, page rankings to go up higher in the Google search. But additionally, you do not need to do any additional SEO work that is required for it to be indexed by Google. It is installable. So you must be thinking I'm contradicting myself. I simply said in few minutes ago that nothing is required to be installed. Now I'm talking about installable. So when we talk about installable, it simply means it just creates a hyperlink and an icon on the user's device, so that it becomes as a quick link that serves the purpose of accessing that site on demand, rather than installing, or maybe going to an app store, searching for an app and then finally installing it. So it does not require any space consumption on your mobile. So it is as simple as it's just a very quick link that gets installed, and besides that icon, there is nothing that get installed on the device. Engaging, obviously, because it provides a full screen experience. So if we talk about more apps, they do not provide you that full screen experience. They would have some sort of space that they would take towards the top of the screen, towards the bottom of the screen. Since it provides an engaging full screen experience, so the user experience gets enhanced by having that thing. And the additional factor that we get in here is the push notification. So the push notifications are web push notifications. So PWAs first of all ask for the permission. If you opt in for that notifications, that yes, you are interested in accepting notifications, then only you would start getting notifications. Even if you're not on that site, the PWAs can still send you the notifications if you have opted in. Then the major feature is it is app like. So when we talk about app like, most of the organizations generally have their responsive web. So that is like, you have a website that would be responsive enough to adjust itself on the mobile devices. But responsive web and PWAs, major differentiator is responsive web is just some CSS hacks, some background scripts that ensure that depending upon the screen size, it adjusts itself and gives another view. But when we talk about PWAs, they give you the entire look and feel of an app. So you do not install anything, but you get the features and you get the look and feel of that an app. Going forward, I'm going to do some analysis of the existing mobile solutions that we have, and this might help in choosing the right sort of strategy for our mobile section. So when we talk about mobile, these are the options that we have. So either we can have a responsive web, we can go for progressive web apps, we can opt for native apps, and the last one is the cross platform apps. So these are the pros and cons that we have on the screen at the moment. So I'll not get into pros and cons and details, but when we do a comparative analysis between progressive web app and responsive, so I just discussed about these 2 points. So I'll focus towards progressive web app versus native apps and cross platform apps. So PWAs, simply they are websites that are running on server. When we talk about native apps, they would definitely get installed on the device. They use a lot of features that devices provide, that could be from your camera to the sensors that are available in the device, the orientation modes, and many other benefits that the native apps provide. So the major difference between these native apps and the cross platform apps would be, for native apps, you need separate line of development for Android platform, separate line of development for iOS platform, and separate line of development for any other platform, whether it be the BlackBerry or maybe Windows Phone. But if we opt to go for cross platform apps, so there would be a single code base which will run across these devices. So if we go for cross platform apps, here we will have one single code base that generally has, we have a lot of tools that can be used, starting from Cordova, PhoneGap to Xamarin Studio, and to some other open source solutions that can be used to create these cross platform apps. But one single code base would run across the devices. That is the main benefit that we get from cross platform apps. And obviously, since it is one single code base, so it would definitely be costly when we compare to native apps or progressive web apps. So I'll be focusing back to on progressive web apps. So they are installable, they provide you app like features, they have these centralized updates. So by centralized updates, we simply means since it is running on a server, so whatever updates you pushed last night would be available instantly to the users. And as I mentioned in the beginning, it is always running on HTTPS, so it is always highly secure for the users. And some of the cons or drawbacks for PWAs would be, they do not have access to native APIs. So if you are looking for say fingerprint scanners on your progressive web apps, that would not be feasible. Browser experience and native UI are two other drawbacks. When we talk about browser experience, ultimately everything would run on a browser since it is a web app. So that would, though we claim that it works like say it gives you an app like feature, but somehow there are chances, and at times the user would definitely miss that native look and feel that these native apps provide. Moving on, so I'll be now discussing here, like, how does this PWA work. So PWA's work, or in fact rests on three core things. One is your application shell, third second is app manifest, and the last one is service worker. So I said the last one is service worker, but actually service worker is the one which does all the magic. So service worker acts as a proxy. So if you are accessing a website, so it intercepts the request that is coming out and then does something that would actually ensure that if it is able to get the data from server, it will fetch that data from server, else it will give you the data from cache. I'll be discussing all these in detail in the upcoming slides, but I just want to give you an overview here as to what the building blocks for PWAs are. Going to application shell, I'm sorry. So application shell is a container on which your PWAs will run. I'll get into the details in upcoming slides. App manifest, this is the most crucial part, which contains the metadata about your website. So that can be the name, that can be the icons, and the orientation on which this PWA will work, how to launch this thing, and then the main part about I talked about add to home screen feature. So everything, like these features are managed by app manifest. So moving on, let me very quickly show you how this service worker works. So if we look at on the left, so we have a web page that we are trying to open, say in our mobile device. So we made a request to a website that could be, www dot say edynamic.net. So while we made a request for edynamic.net, if we talk about, if we have this PWA portal, then there would be service worker which will intercept this request that you send, rather than it directly taking you to the website. And if the website is down, showing you that message of, this is check your internet connection, or this site is not available, it would actually intercept this thing. So this green icon which I have used here, it's representing service worker. So service worker intercepts this request, then makes a request to the web. In case this fetch from the web fails, it will go back to the cache. So when we talk about cache, because generally the web model is okay, go to the web page, get the results. If it is there, great. If it is not there, show the user that it's not working. But the main benefit of getting those sites converted into PWAs cache the content whatever user has accessed. So if it is a first time access and there is no content, definitely the user would not see anything. It would be a blank app because it cannot fetch data from the cache. But say if a user has accessed maybe say 2 pages of your portal, now if there is no internet connectivity and the user cannot reach the website, then this service worker will make a hit to the website. In case it is not available, it will go to the cache, and in case the data is there, then it will return that cache data, and the user would not see any error message, user would not see a blank screen, but the cached thing that the user has accessed in the last visit to the website would be displayed on the screen. Now this is the application shell. So if we look at the images on the screen, so application shell, as I said, is a container. So it represents a container through HTML, JavaScripts, and all those web technologies that are there. So application shell is here. So looking at the first screen, so this is the blank application shell. Whenever there is a data, so the data would be accommodated inside this shell. So it is showing you like if it is in working in the offline mode. So these are three pages that the user access: index, then URL1 and URL2. So that would be displayed from the cache, and once that web is available, so the APIs would make I'm sorry about that. So then an API hit would be made, and the content, if it is available, would come again to application shell, and the static content that we are looking at in the screen 2 would be replaced with this dynamic content that we have got from the web that you are seeing on the screen 3. So this is what the application shell is in the PWAs. Moving on, PWA app manifest. This is the metadata for your entire PWA. This would have all the details about which I have bullet pointed on the left. So it will contain the name of the web application, the icons that we use, the preferred URL for opening the web, and orientation, whether it be would be portrait mode or whether it be vertical mode. Then how about how do you want to open your app, whether it would be in full screen, or whether it should actually respect the boundaries and then be showing in the container that generally mobile shows. So all these configurations can be done in this. And app manifest is also the one wherein you configure how your add to home screen button would look, what the URL would be showing, what is the action that would be taken when the person clicks on add to home screen button. Moving on, now since we have now covered what PWAs are, what are the three building blocks for the PWAs. So great. So technology we understand now, what that is we understand now, but is it actually adding any value to the business? So that is the main point that we would be more focused on, that we should consider, because any management would need to have an ROI on the things that we are investing. So the next slide would detail out as to what is the business value that PWAs provide. When we talk about business value, so there are three main important benefits that we get using PWAs. The first would be customer engagement. the second would be user experience, and the third would be improved website. So I'm taking the improved website on the first point. So improved website, as I said, it is made to work even on slow networks. So even if the internet connectivity is low, the user would still be able to access your website. Secondly, since there are proxies, in case there is not an internet connectivity, the user would get a cached version of the data that we have. And lastly, since it has been designed to load the things faster, so even if the connection is low, the web page, say if on normal website, if it takes say 1 second to open, on the PWAs it would be maybe say 1/10 of the time that it would open, because that is how it has been designed for. Now, moving on to user experience. So user experience is the key nowadays. So user is opening your PWA. The first screen that they get would be a full screen thing, wherein it is very beautifully and nicely placed. And in addition to that, it is working even on slow networks. Then if I am a user, say I went till page number 3 of a website, then I close down this app. When I come back, it will still remember my preferences, and if there is any update available, then it would tell me about this is the new update that I should install. And it would always ensure that whatever data I have accessed, and if I'm a returning user, then I should be up and running in no time. So even if there is no internet connection, I should always get something on the website even from cache. Customer engagement is the key that and I would say I just love this feature in here. First, notifications. Second, add to home screen. Notification is something that you can always use to engage your users, or in fact re-engage your users. So I have say a website which is offering a newsletter, or I want to tell the users about upcoming newsletter. So one option that I earlier had prior to PWA was that I would have an email address that I send the users. So the bounce rate for email address is definitely high. I'm not sure whether it landed in inbox or whether it went to the junk. Now I have a direct connectivity with the user. So the user has installed my PWA and has opted for notifications. I can simply send a notification which will directly land on the user's home screen, and the user would be instantly notified about there is a new upcoming newsletter or any critical update that I want to send to my users. Add to home screen, again, once the user opts for add to home screen, there would be an icon that is already placed on the home screen, and the user does not need to worry about searching Google, finding out the details, and bookmarking that thing, or maybe noting down that URL at any place, which is not very efficient way of handling things. So notifications and add to home screen definitely increases customer engagement when we talk about PWAs. Moving on, now we have seen what PWAs are, how they work, what is the business value that they add. But every technology comes with some benefits and drawbacks. So if we talk about the benefits, so the main benefits that we have are listed on the left side, which are zero install. There is no installation that is required. No app store mediation. You do not need to actually get the things developed, then go for app store, then the user go there and search and then finally install it. And uninstall rate for apps is really high. So they do not need to install anything. It is always safe and always up to date. It is discoverable and easy to share. When we talk about discoverable, as I explained earlier, since it is a website, so it is already SEO compatible and it is always indexed with the Google. Shareable, it is very easy to share these things with if we have done proper configurations on the app manifest. It definitely works on even very slow internet connections, and add to home screen and PNs we just discussed and are the key features according to me for the PWA. But any great technology do have some drawbacks. So the first drawback that this PWA has is most of the browsers are now supporting PWAs, but when we talk about Apple browsers or iOS technology, it is still not it has still not adopted the PWAs. So iOS users, like the Safari, or if you go to any other Mac thing, so they still do not support PWAs. And one positive was like you do not need any app store. But if we look at the data, app store is again a key for businesses now. So most of the searches happen on the app store. Based on that, the users download that thing. Since we are not on the app store, so we are definitely losing on a critical share of the users that are on the app store. Then there are few drawbacks, like Facebook login or social media login that we generally have on the websites cannot work via web apps, because they are required to run on servers, and these require authentication from the installed apps that we have on the phone. And additionally, since these are web apps, they do not access the advanced technologies that can be your fingerprint scanner or maybe camera like features. Camera is something that is still accessible, but these advanced features like scanners and sensors, they cannot be used with PWAs. And again, as I just said, iOS, similar to that, there are other browsers which are still not supporting PWAs. Now, moving on to case studies. So these are the major players which have adopted PWAs recently, of which Twitter, AliExpress, Flipkart, and in Indian e-commerce giant 5 Miles, it's a marketplace, and Alibaba, again a giant in e-commerce. So I'll be focusing on just three of them, but these are the players which have recently incorporated PWAs in their portal and how they have actually got benefited from this. So the first one is Alibaba. So prior to adopting PWAs, Alibaba was obviously, it's a giant in e-commerce, so it was doing very well. But from the time they actually got PWAs, this is the statistics that they have got improved. So there is a 76% higher conversion across browsers, and we are talking about browsers across the devices. Then there was a 14% increase in monthly active users on iOS, and there was a 30% increase in monthly active users on Android. Besides these benefits that they got, there was a 4 times higher interaction rate from ad to home screen. So the Alibaba app had definitely a higher number of users, but when they introduced their PWAs, these are the stats that they got. Moving on to the next case study, which is of Aliexpress. So Alibaba is an e-commerce site, and Aliexpress is a sister concern or maybe a side venture for Alibaba itself. So these are the stats that they got from PWAs, and it's astonishing that they got an increase of 104% conversion rate for new users. So conversion rate, we are not talking about that these would have got converted into sales, but when we talk about conversion rates, so user adding things to their basket would be a conversion. So we do not have details about what that conversion rate is, but they definitely got increased in conversion rates for 104%. Then there was a 74% increase in session duration. So I'm sure session duration is from the time that a user came on to a page until the time the user was there. So generally it could be maybe varying from say 1 minute to 2 minute or 30 second to maybe 5 minutes. But PWAs, once AliExpress introduced PWA in their web technologies, so they got a 74% increase in session duration. So one of the major reasons that I could make out is, since it is the user experience that we were talking about. So since it is providing you highly engaging UI, the customer experience is better. Then it is giving you, features like the notifications and instant things. So that would be the reason that they got an increase in session duration. In addition to that, they had twice more page visited per session per user across the browsers. So if they had one user coming per session on one browser, so they just instantly got it doubled. So the number of pages any user visited in a session got doubled by using the PWA. Now, the last case study, which is 5 Miles, so they got a 50% decrease in bounce rate when they introduced PWAs. They got 30% increase in time spent on website, and they had 30% better conversion for users who arrived via add to home screen. So add to home screen again is a very crucial feature, wherein 5 months definitely a very good marketplace, but eventually you need to remember the number. You need to remember what products you saw on the site, or the option is you open that site, you go there, unless and until you have put it in a basket or recently viewed items that would be there. But again, you would see into it, then you search, then you go to another section. How about you just open this thing, and whatever you recently viewed, or you just click on this thing and it gets updated, and it is always up to date, and fresh data that you get. That is the reason why we got 30% better conversion for users who arrived from ad to home screen. So I am almost done with this webinar. So I'll very quickly recap as to what we discussed in here. So these are the 7 critical features that PWAs provide, starting from support for low frequency networks, that is 2G networks, add to home screen feature, which allows you to add a quick link to the home screen, offline access that we have already talked about and detailed out in worker section, where everything is cached, safe and secure. It always runs on HTTPS. Push notifications, so they are not normal push notifications, they are web push notifications that happen on PWAs. It is SEO friendly and analytics. So whatever user is doing on your portal, if you put a background analytics in that, you would have better data, and that would definitely help in analyzing the data and directing your campaigns as to what the user is doing on the site, and what would actually benefit the user if we have these kind of statistics over a month or maybe over a quarter. So this presentation is almost done. I'm open for questions if anyone has questions here. Anyone? Any questions? Okay, so I believe there are no questions. Then anybody who wants to get in touch with me can always write to me at pradeep.patel@edynamic.net. Thank you everyone for attending this webinar, and have a great day.